Hi, and welcome to What's New in Aero UI. I'm Brian Schmitz, Manager of eDiscovery Technology and Innovation, and I'll be your guide through what's new in the updated Aero user interface in RelativityOne versus what you might have already experienced in Relativity Server. Let's dive in. Just a quick note that for this demonstration of what's new in Aero UI, it's presented in RelativityOne version 11.3.185.7, aka the Mayapple 1 release. If you're viewing this content at a later date and we've already had a feature update since, maybe update to Relativity 12.0, for example, just note that your experience may differ slightly from what's being presented in this video. Okay, we're going to jump right into the updated RelativityOne login screen. And I'm going to log in as this demo reviewer. So we're going to be brought to the updated Workspace Selector screen. And this is where it would list out all the workspaces that you have permissions to. Here I only have one listed, and you can see that it's pinned up to the top. So if I remove that pin, it actually gives me a little tooltip to pin my favorite workspaces there. I can pin whatever workspace I have access to up to that bar for easier jumping in point. And I'll quick note that this sidebar tab is blue. That indicates that you're in home mode, or at the workspace selector screen essentially. If I click into the workspace, we'll jump into that, and you can see that this sidebar tab turned gray, and that helps indicate that you're in workspace mode. So here's the updated Aero UI in workspace mode. You can see that it's still somewhat familiar to Relativity Server, but it's a modern, updated look and feel, a lot more white space, a lot more careful attention to detail for iconography and font choices. Off to the left side, as I mentioned, is the new sidebar tabs and the sidebar tab structure. Orange is a wayfinder of sorts. So I'm on the Documents tab and it is orange. So that's a way to indicate where I am at any given time. You can see as I arrow over the Reporting Parent tab, I have some child tabs now that flew out to the right. And I created this Advanced tab here to show that you can have 3 levels of tabs. So I just put my Pivot Profiles and User Status tab under the Advanced tab. So now I have 3 levels deep if I want to structure it that way. And if I click over to Pivot Profiles for a moment, you can see that the Reporting Parent tab turned orange. The Advanced sub-tab has this orange bar underneath it, so that helps indicate where I am. And then Pivot Profiles is a light blue selection. So that's a quick way to tell where I am. Additionally, you may have seen up top here, this is now called the Breadcrumbs, and this changed as I went from Documents to this Pivot Profiles page. So it again shows me that I'm under Reporting, Advanced, Pivot Profiles. And all of the tabs that I have access to in my profile are also allowed under the All Tabs menu. So I click that hamburger icon in the lower left, and it brings open all the tabs that I have access to in the workspace. So I can jump right back to Documents this way. I could have done it through the Sidebar tab. And I could also do it through the Quick Nav. Quick Nav is still here up in the upper right. They've made the box a little bit larger. So if I wanted to go back to Pivot Profiles, I could just type it out right there. That Quick Nav shows you everything that you have access to in the current workspace. And then if you have access to multiple workspaces, it will also search through those other workspaces too. Favorites are just move the icon over to the breadcrumbs area, so you can see that my documents are favorited. I can select or unselect it as a favorite page. Then those end up in my favorites menu off to the right. It lists your favorites up top and then the 10 most recent pages that you've visited down below. And then next to favorites is your avatar. This is kind of a Google-centric approach to an avatar. This is where it tucks away your My Settings and change password functionality. And you can also log out from here. Beneath that is the dashboard area, all the dashboards that have been created for you for that workspace you have access to. And if you have permissions to add widgets, that is the button right next to it. So here I could add a pivot or a cluster visualization from this profile. Still have the search term bar up above, the document list here, your mass action button, and save search button. And it also uses orange as a way to show what's enabled. So we have the browser panel enabled. We have the search condition panel enabled. So those are two orange icons. I have some blue icons that are not enabled. So here's a document preview panel. That's not showing right now, so that's blue. As soon as I click it and bring it open, it turns orange. So there's my document preview panel. Anything that has this 6-dot icon, I can manipulate and move. So I hover over that, it turns to directional arrow, and now I click and drag to a different blue box that kind of shows where I can place it. So maybe I like it onto the right side, and now it'll remember that if I log out and log back in later, it'll remember that I moved it over to that right side. Finally, before I jump into a document, if you get used to these tab structures and icons, you can collapse this for a little bit more screen real estate. That's this chevron over here. I can just click that. It collapses the words out of the way. So now the icons remain, but you still can arrow over the parent tabs and all the child tabs still fly out. And you can get the descriptions back by clicking the right chevron. Okay, so we're going to jump into some documents here that I have selected to show off some of the Aero UI feature set. So we've jumped into a document here, and this is the updated Aero UI. This is first party, no more third-party plugins for the document viewer. We still have the document front and center. We have persistent highlight sets enabled on this document. We have our coding pane off to the right. It's a little bit more modern, updated again with a lot more white space, better font choices for readability. The related items pane is still down here. The icons are still present, but they're hidden behind these word choices. So if I click open the family group here, you can see my icons now get populated down here. So if you're used to icons, you can still navigate through the icons that way, or I can use this drop-down menu and jump to a related item that way. So I can jump to thread group this way, or I could have just hit the icon that way. And if you have access to document history or production history, that's a second tab over here. And this is collapsible through this icon here, or I can expand it again. Same here, I can collapse the coding pane out of the way, and I can bring it back. Off to the left is the documents pane. So here I jumped in from a saved search, so these are all the documents in my saved search. If I jumped in from the document list, it would show me everything in the document list. The viewer modes are still present and kind of give you a little bit more indication as to what's available and what's not. So here I'm on the native tab. There is an image tab, but it's telling me no image. So I don't have this document imaged right now. Here's the long text viewer mode. So I have extracted text available. Here's the production viewer mode. I don't have a production on this document. So again, no production. Then there's a PDF viewer mode, and that's new to RelativityOne in the Mayapple release. I'm going to go into a deeper dive about PDF tab and the use of it in a later video series. But just note that this is another way to store documents and then later produce them. It also changes how it's stored on the back end. because you can have a native, you can have an image, you can have a production, and you can have a PDF representation. So you could have really 4 representations, and really even more if you have more productions of it. So I won't go too far into the PDF tab, but that's available as well as a workflow option. Some familiar icons are here to help you with your review. Some you may recognize are kind of missing, but they're just tucked under this new document action bar. So if you have access to or permissions to download natives, you just click on that document control ID and it downloads to your chosen folder. This drop down hides a few other options. Again, download native, document native. Also, copy document link and email document are found under this menu. And then if you have permissions to image, it also allows image on the fly based on various imaging profiles set up for your workspace. Also updated, you could always search within a document, but now you can actually do DT search within a document. So I'm going to search this document for gas within 2 of power, which is, of course, a DT search syntax. So I hit enter, and there are 2 terms found there. And those terms also are populated in the persistent highlight set pane under recent searches. So I can navigate through those. I could also add terms this way. Into my recent searches. It doesn't add to your persistent highlight sets, but it's just a simple recent search kind of highlight. So here I could do crude within 4 of oil and run a search that way. And sure enough, there's 2 more hits on my document. And I can clear those out as well. Also on persistent highlight sets, I'm going to jump to my 4th example document here to explain persistent highlight set navigation. So I have several persistent highlight sets set up here. I have a primary set, I have related terms set, and you can still navigate through all those terms through your highlight set navigation buttons up here. You can see I'm running through 9 terms. But if I didn't want to run through all 9 terms and I just wanted to focus on a singular highlight set, like maybe my primary highlight set, I could still turn all these off like I used to, but I don't have to use those extra mouse clicks. I could just click on the primary set above, and you can see that the highlight set navigation icons appear. And so now I can just go through those 4. Additionally, if I just cared about one term in a highlight set, like maybe I only care about these 4 terms in my related terms set, I could click on that singular term and go through those highlights as well. I can still turn off the other terms if I want to get those out of my view, but I don't need to if I don't want to. I can just highlight the one term. Okay, so a couple other things to show off here. I'm going to go back to my 2nd document in this set. So if you're used to looking through long text viewer mode, maybe through extracted text, especially for spreadsheets like this, you'll know that you have a whole lot of mismatched columns. And they've added a tab structure now in the extracted text viewer. So here I'm in the small tab mode. I can change that to normal. You can see that these columns are starting to align better. Large gives me even more space between tabs. And this is pretty well aligned now, and I can review my extracted text better that way. There is a very large, but for this particular document, it's now kind of running off the page. You can change this tab structure however you want for each document. Additionally, for Word documents or large text documents, there is now a word wrap option. So I'm going to toggle this off just to show what that will help with. So as I scroll down, you can see I could come to this page and it scrolls off to the right. So I could still scroll left and right to read this document, but I don't need to anymore because I can just toggle on a word wrap, and that's toggled on by default. So I just toggled it off to show for demonstration, but it's toggled on by default, and now I don't have to navigate left and right on this particular page. I can just continue to read down. Also, they've updated thumbnail support for native documents. So here I'm still in that Word document. If I click the thumbnail viewer, you can see that I now have thumbnails for my native document. I don't have this document imaged. There's no image in my image tab here. So this is just a native document, native Word document loaded in. I have thumbnails now available to me. And if you can see, the persistent highlight is also present on the thumbnails. So this might be a great way to look through very quickly to see what page you want to navigate to. This is updated for anything that has pagination. So your Word docs, your PowerPoints, your PDFs, anything that has pagination will allow native thumbnails to be viewable. Anything that doesn't have pagination, like emails, they're not actually natively paginated, so you're going to get just a note in the thumbnail viewer that thumbnails are not supported. Okay, and then we'll just navigate to this fifth document to show that email thread visualization is still available as well. They've updated that to the Aero UI aesthetic. You can still mass edit documents through the mass edit button and start selecting documents to code in bulk. There's the zoom out, zoom in, and reset zoom buttons. There's the legend, hide, or show button, and then there's the button to select your different structured analytics sets if you have multiple available. And then finally, they've brought analytics to the front of the document now with this View Similar Documents button. Now, this only shows if you have conceptual analytics index created for your document universe. If you don't have a conceptual analytics index created, you won't see this button. It'll be grayed out. So, and when I click on this, it brings up a similar document search, and it is sorted by rank order, how conceptually similar these documents are to this example document. And it's created a queue. That's why I'm in this similar documents queue area. So I can kind of navigate throughout this queue to click into other documents that are conceptually similar to my example document. To back out of the queue, I would just hit this documents link again, and I can collapse that sidebar now. Other conceptual analytic options are still available through the right-click menu. So if I needed to do keyword expansion, I could right-click on a word and select keyword expansion. That brings up the sidebar pane again and runs a keyword expansion on the content. Same goes for just running a concept search on just a paragraph, or adding excerpts as examples, or adding documents to your Case Dynamics items if you have Case Dynamics installed into your workspace. So again, that created a keyword expansion queue. So I'm going to back out of that queue by clicking on the documents link. And now I'm back to just the 8 documents that I had for examples. Okay, so I'm just going to show a few more features outside in the document list, one updated feature is the search term bar. Now it actually remembers all of the searches that you run. So if I do oil within 2 of barrel here against my DT search index, I'll run that. I get 2 hits out of this universe. Now I can clear conditions. And if I click in there, it'll remember my last 10 recent searches. So here I've searched a few other times with other DT search syntaxes, and it remembers the search container that I used. So if I click on attach within 5 of documents, it remembers that I actually ran that incorrectly against my keyword search container, and that's why I have 0 hits. And I can clear that out of my recent searches by clicking the X button here. Or I can clear all my recent searches. Now this is only remembering my recent searches. It's not remembering the rest of my legal team's searches. That's really what saved searches are for, to share searches with others. So if I click over to save searches, I'll just really quickly show the updated modals for creating a new search. So if I click create new search, this is the updated Aero UI design for how these searches are created, but all the content is familiar. You just name it, you tell it an owner, whether it's public or private. You can add a dashboard if you have access to dashboards. The scope, whether you're running an entire workspace or just selected folders. And then you add your conditions, whether they're related items should be shown, add the fields that you want shown in your search and how you want to sort your search. Then you can save and search, or just search, or simply save, or you can cancel out. You can see that most of the time it knows that you're going to save and search, so that's why that's a dark blue instead of the light white and just blue font as these other options allow. And finally, I wanted to quickly touch on the PDF function. So in Relativity Server, they had a mass operation called Save as PDF. That's been replaced by a PDF application now, which handles PDF creation a little more intuitively and a little bit more refined on the back end. So if I'm just going to select a few documents here and use my mass action here as PDF, it pops open a couple options for me. It asks what kind of action I'm doing, if I'm downloading PDFs, if I'm storing it in Relativity. That is related to that PDF tab that I briefly mentioned in the document viewer, and deleting PDF, that's also related to that PDF tab. File types, whether you're wanting to PDF the natives, the original images, or produced images, if those are available. Your PDF options include individual PDFs in a zip file, just a single PDF, or creating a PDF portfolio. And then these options further down either are enabled or removed from your view depending on your PDF option. So if I just selected single PDF, several options go away because they don't apply to single PDFs. But if I use PDF portfolio or individual PDFs in a zip, I have some naming options. So I can name it by control number or control number and field, or just a simple field. Or I can also append the file type to the name. I could prefix a sequential number if ordering is important and the control number or the field that I'm using for naming option is not alphabetical. And then you can also select a PDF profile. So if you have PDF profiles built for you in the workspace, I have 2 here. I have a default and a searchable profile. So here, my default profile I have created. I don't have the text searchable. I'm not including highlights or redactions. I'm not stamping anything. That's just a very quick default that I created. Or maybe I want to make it searchable. So I created this searchable PDF profile. And so that makes my text searchable in the PDFs that I create. And it's using a standard OCR profile. I can set up any number of PDF profiles that could work on any number of workflows. And then you just click Create PDF, and it runs through the wizard. And it tells you how your progress is. And then once it's complete, you can download the PDF. And there we go. And that wraps up our tour of the updated Aero user interface in RelativityOne compared to what you would experience in Relativity Server. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to your project manager or contact me directly at brian.schmitz@specialcounsel.com. Thanks for your time today.